There's now a path forward to recover from the baby formula shortage. That's according to the Food and Drug Administration's latest comments on the issue. They're saying parents should start seeing a return to normal in a few weeks. NTD's Melina Wisecup has the latest.
Parents should find it easier to get their hands on baby formula over the next few weeks. That's the anticipated timeline from the FDA.
This will gradually improve over a period of a few weeks, but we're working closely with Abbott to get that plant that was shut down up and operating as soon as possible.
Abbott, the nation's largest baby formula supplier, is cleared to reopen its shuttered plant in Michigan in 2 weeks. The plant was shut down over unsanitary conditions, although the producer says it could take up to 10 weeks to recover the loss in production. The FDA said today the supply of formula is there, but work needs to be done to get it to the shelves. Now the administration plans to ramp up its imports from other countries.
What we are looking to do is make available that supply from abroad.
As a short-term fix, the White House has loosened up restrictions on WIC, a government program that allows low-income mothers to buy formula. For now, WIC users can buy any brand of infant formula.
Melina, and now after feeling the heat over the supply issue, Democrats who are in control on Capitol Hill are now pushing a bill to address this shortage. What can you tell us about this?
Steve, that bill that Congress is working on right now would grant WIC something called an emergency authority. It would allow the federal government to lift certain restrictions and regulations during a time of a shortage, such as we're seeing right now. So in the future, they could tackle these types of problems more quickly. Now, in addition to this, to address the issue in the short term, Congress also wants to pass more money to address the shortage. But as of right now, it's unclear exactly how much money they want to spend on this and exactly where that money would go. But considering Congress is aiming to pass this by the end of the week, we expect more details about the amount of money and where that money will go over the next couple of days. Steve, back to you.
The White House fired back at Amazon founder Jeff Bezos. Over the weekend, Bezos started criticizing President Biden's economic policies and accused him of misleading the public on inflation. Bezos tweeted, "Inflation is a regressive tax that hurts the affluent the least. Misdirection doesn't help the country," he said. A White House spokesperson, Andrew Bates, responded with a statement criticizing Bezos for being against the middle class. Bezos tweeted earlier saying that the Biden White House wants to muddy the topic, saying, quote, "Raising corporate taxes is fine to discuss. Taming inflation is critical to discuss. Mushing them together is just misdirection." The Supreme Court handed a victory to Senator Ted Cruz. In this legal case, Cruz challenged federal limits on the amount of money candidates can raise from donors to pay off their personal debt after an election. In a 6-3 ruling, the justices struck down a rule that political candidates can be reimbursed to up to $250,000 after an election for personal loans. The Biden administration had argued that disallowing the rule would open the door to bribery in elections, but the High Court found that the restriction violated the First Amendment. Critical race theory is being detected in a majority of top medical schools throughout the nation. An independent study by criticalrace.org shows that 39 of the 50 top medical schools in the country have worked CRT into their curricula. CriticalRace.org's founder, William Jacobson, is a clinical professor of law at Cornell Law School. He told Fox News that mandatory critical race theory training centers ideology, not patients, as the focus of medical education, and that this is a drastic change from focusing on the individual. And the New York Post reports that Congresswoman Elise Stefanik is accusing New York education officials of using pandemic relief money to fuel the spread of critical race theory in public schools. Stefanik says that anti-racism curricula advocates for discriminatory treatment of Americans on the basis of race. Marxist and communist ideas have undoubtedly snuck their way into the thoughts and ideas of American culture. From pop culture icons idolizing the likes of communist revolutionaries like Che Guevara and Mao Zedong, to the Marxist underpinnings of the Black Lives Matter movement and the current culture war against critical race theory. Another area of our lives where we've seen the Marxist agenda taking root is during the pandemic. This cunning ideology permeates more in our daily lives than we might imagine. Cheryl Chumley is an editor at the Washington Times and author of the book Lockdown, The Socialist Plan to Take Away Your Freedom. She's an expert in understanding socialism, Marxism, and the way they take shape in the United States. We asked her about the importance of understanding these ideologies in order to recognize them before they take root. Here's our interview. Cheryl Chumley, thank you so much for joining us on the Capitol Report.
It's great to be with you. Thank you.
Cheryl, I think for most people, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, when you look at the impact of the pandemic from multiple angles, you get a sense that our world and way of life has been altered. You've highlighted in your books and writing that there's a socialist underpinning or undercurrent at work here. Can you help us unpack that a little bit?
Well, I spend my whole book writing about that. But in short, if you look at the last 2 years of the coronavirus and the actions that the Democrat Party in particular took to justify continued lockdowns on the American people, they would say things like you can't go into a church, but you can go into Walmart and so forth. The science had to have been a red flag to most of Americans. And yet when you point out that so-called science that was used to justify these sometimes conflicting dictates, you were booted off social media. So there was a stifling of critical thinking and critical discussion that also went forth. But more importantly, if you look at outside America's borders, what government bureaucrats in the global arena were doing and saying about the pandemic, that's the biggest alarm right there. If you look at, for instance, the World Economic Forum and its Great Reset, and what that will ultimately mean for America and individual freedoms. Looking forward, that's something that Americans need to pay attention to and to fight.
So I guess this next question is for a lot of your, average Democrats out there that aren't really into politics but have always voted blue. Has the traditional liberal platform of pro-freedom shifted or been hijacked in a way, in your opinion?
Absolutely. And it's not just my opinion. In my most recent book, Socialists Don't Sleep, I actually look at the platforms of the Democrat Party and compare them to the platforms of, say, the Communist Party and the Socialist Party and the Progressives and so forth. And they are essentially one and the same. And it's a shame because there are many good Democrats in America who think that when they vote the Democrat ticket, that they're voting for the same type of principles that, say, Kennedy brought forward, or even Bill Clinton advocated for. But this is an entirely different Democrat Party. The modern day Democrats are far more in line with the socialist and communist and cultural Marxist agendas than they are of even the Democrats of Bill Clinton days.
Do you think that the evilness and the teachings of Marxism need to be taught and studied in order for it to be identified as it slowly does take root in our country?
Well, I definitely favor teaching the evils of Marxism and what it does to individual freedoms and ultimately what it does to nations who abide by its principles. Because I think right now what we have going on in America is a seepage of socialism into both the political system and the culture that goes unknown, unaware, because the politicians who are pushing those socialist type of policies don't call it socialism. For instance, in Congress, we only have officially 4 members of Congress who affiliate themselves with the Democratic Socialists of America, which is not a political party, but it is a campaign. And if you look, though, at what they vote for, at the agendas they promote, 80% of Democrats in office also support and promote the same thing. So if you're not teaching your next generation of leaders about the evils of Marxism and socialism and collectivism in general, because that's what all these types of political beliefs lead to, then you have a generation who is not taught to understand how to identify those things that counter what is great about America. And that is, in a phrase, God-given liberties.
Cheryl Chumley, appreciate your insights. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pennsylvania Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman says he has also suffered a stroke. He's also a Democratic candidate for the United States Senate in Pennsylvania. Fetterman's campaign canceled events on Friday, saying that he was not feeling well. On Sunday, Fetterman and his wife released a 16-second video saying he had gone to the hospital. Fetterman's campaign spokesperson released a statement saying that Fetterman had a stroke from atrial fibrillation, but is expected to make a full recovery.